I'm Rebecca with Collective Rise Studios located in Woodlawn, Virginia. And today I'm going to show you how to make this bird's nest. It's just rattan. This one has pine needles woven into it. You can choose to weave in anything that you want. You can use yarn, metal, grasses. You can do it all rattan, however you want to do it. If you can flex it around the spokes, you can put it in there. What we do today and what will come in your kits will just be rattan. You can add anything to it that you want to. So we're going to start out and I'll show you how to do the bottom and get that base woven. And then we'll go up the sides just a little bit. It's kind of tricky to learn the pattern, but once you get it, it's fairly easy. And then after we go up so high, I'm going to switch samples and show you how to do the braid so that you don't have to watch me put 100 pieces in. This particular one has 100 little pieces in it. So it takes a little bit of time, but it isn't difficult at all. You just have to learn how to hold the rattan. So we're going to start out, these are approximately 18 inches long. It's number 2 round rattan. And you'll catch me switching off. Sometimes I say reed, sometimes I say rattan. So we're going to start with 4 pair. And we're going to let our other 4 soak. So there's 16 total, and you place them in pairs. The first thing you do is make a plus sign, and I don't measure. You can, if you want to mark your centers, you can just flex them like this, put your ends together, bring your finger up, and make a little mark. I tend to eyeball it for this project because it is a bird's nest, and it gives it a little more organic look if you don't try to make it perfect. Oh, I just realized something. I'll try it anyway. All right, so you make a plus sign. And then on top of that plus sign, you make an X. And it gets a little fumbly to hold it, but once you get started, it gets easier. Plus sign, and then we put an X on top of it. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but I just put a pair of scissors. Usually you'll have your cutters handy. Just lay them on top. Oh, I forgot to tell you to put everything in a water bath. Everything has to go in a warm water bath so it'll be flexible. We're going to start with a basic twine, and then after we go around once or twice, we're going to add 4 more sets of spokes on top. And I'll tell you a little trick I do when I'm twining in this way. I don't fold my piece directly in half. I make the ends a little bit different. I leave one side longer, and the reason for that is that they don't both run out at the same time. So you don't have as obvious of a place where you're adding in new material. Just spreads it out a little bit. You bend it in half. I always pinch it so that it's easier to boss it around a little bit. Bend it in half, and literally like a hairpin in half. All right. Move your scissors out of the way. I tend to start on the bottom. Whatever pair of spokes is on the bottom is just where I tend to start. You don't have to do it that way. I find it locks things in place just a little bit better. So you take that loop that you made and put it over that pair of spokes. Put it over both spokes. Bring it all the way down. It's not going to go all the way quite to the center. Don't worry about that. You can see on the class sample, it doesn't go all the way into this point in the middle. There's a little bit of space. That's how you want it to look. So you're going to start like right here. All right. I use my index finger of my left hand and hold that down. I get that just sort of maybe within 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch from the center. And then just do a basic twine. You see there's a weaver on top and one on bottom. You lift the one on top, and I just pinch that up next pair in the row with my thumb and index and put that top piece right underneath there. It'll be a little bit fidgety to start with. I promise once you get a couple rows going, it gets a lot easier to manage. Kind of spin it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to be a bird's nest. And when I get done with mine, I fill them with Spanish moss. There's a product called Excelsior, I believe. It's like a thin wood shaving looking thing. Fill it with that. You can fill it with paper shreds, whatever you want. But your bottom's not really going to show that much. And I'm just picking up my spokes and doing a basic twine. You take the top weaver, move it underneath the next set of spokes, flip it around. If you can do it without turning it, that's fine too. I'm not that coordinated. Pick up the top one, put it underneath. And now I'm back to my beginning. I'm going to do one more. So I'm at my start. I've gone all the way around. And sometimes I'll look, it's like this one's a little bit shorter. I'll just go ahead and pull it. You can move them at this point. There's not so much weaving that it's hard to pull. Just a little bit of effort. What's that one doing? All right, I think we're pretty good. Okay, at this point, I'm going to pick up another pair of spokes and lay it down in this space. So you're basically making another cross and another plus, but you're filling in these large spaces in between your first 4 sets. Sometimes I lay them all down at once, sometimes not. I did that yesterday when I was doing the sample. I just laid them all 4 right on top, and I thought maybe that would be a little bit difficult for people. So we'll try it this way. See, I just laid it right on top. Get that out of the way. And then I'm just going to pretend like it was always there. I'm going to go with that top weaver, put it underneath the new pair of spokes, and just go right around, just like it was always there. Except I'm not getting it in place. All right, I'm going to go around this pair. Why is that doing that? It needs to stay there. I was getting a little confused about where that one needed to be. Just make sure that it goes straight across, just like a pie. And I'm laying my next pair in the next space. I'm putting quite a bit of pressure with my index finger to hold everything in place. Pick up that top weaver, run it underneath the new pair. And then pick up from the old set. And place a new pair. We've only got one more pair to do. And then we'll have all of our spokes in place. I've always wanted to do one of these with metal in it, and I've not ever done it. I'm going to have to play around with that idea a little bit. I think you could add some neat textures with metal. I'm missing a spoke. There it is. Oops, I need that on top. So when you get that, this is our last pair, and as I get that placed, I'm going to go around and make sure that I've got everything in the right place before I carry on with another row. But first I'm going to make sure everything's secured so that I can move it around and work with it, make sure everything's where I want it to be. Make sure everything's held in place. And you'll notice as you go along that your spokes start to get lighter in color, and that means they're drying a little bit. You want to keep them wet, especially your weaver on this part. See, I'm not having to keep my index there so much anymore because as the rows start to get woven, it locks everything in place. And see, it's not perfect, and I'm not going to worry too much about that. It's a bird's nest. It's supposed to be a little bit organic, not so perfect. Just as long as it stays together, and you're good. You put a decoration in there anyway. You're not even going to see the bottom. All right, I'm back to the beginning. See, I've got a little more space here than I have over here. Doesn't really matter. Just kind of straighten it up a little bit so it's sort of-ish even. And then just let it go. And you're done. We're going to keep going around in this basic twine. The base really takes a little bit longer than the rest of it, I think. You go until it's probably 4.5 to 5 inches in diameter. You don't have to go that big if you don't want to. You just keep taking that top weaver, run it underneath the next set of spokes, and tuck it down toward the center. The other weaver automatically ends up on top. You don't even have to think about it. Just pick the one on top, run it underneath the next set of spokes, and keep going. As I'm bringing this down, I'm actually using my left index finger and guiding it so that both of my index fingers are pulling down. It helps tuck it in a little bit better, and then I just hold that spoke down with my middle finger. And if you're left-handed, you're going to be doing the exact same thing, just the opposite direction. I'm going to untwist my twining piece a little bit. Probably need to get it wet. If you have a water bottle, like a spray bottle that you would use for houseplants, you can just put a little bit of warm water in it. They work great for keeping your spokes damp, but you want to make sure you have your surface protected if you're going to do that. I'm going to show you this real quick too. Remember, I didn't measure. This is something that can happen when you don't measure. For me, it doesn't matter because I'm just going to grab this and pull it. See, I'm a little more even that way. So if that kind of thing bothers you, then you want to mark your center. I just pull it until it lines up. Kind of looks like a little sunburst. And this kind of base is used for a lot of different baskets. And sometimes when your rattan is larger, people will actually make a slot in the rattan and run the pieces literally through each other instead of stacking them up. So we just stacked our 8 right in the middle. I'm going to pull this one a little. I'm going to be running out of material in just a few more rows, so I'll be able to show you how to replace. Adding additional material when your weavers run out on this is really easy. I don't do anything fancy to hide the ends. I just let them show because it's kind of an organic project anyway. It doesn't have to be all perfect and neat and tidy. I don't know if my hands are moving too fast. I'm just sort of running my hand down the length of that spoke with my thumb underneath the pear, pushing down with my index, and just sliding it so that I'm not constantly lifting up and down on those spokes. The more you bend rattan, the more flimsy it gets. And if your spokes happen to be dry and you lift up, you're going to break them. You can fix them. It's just easier not to have to. So I'm just picking that up. And this is just a basic twine going around and around until it gets as big as you would like for it to be. And I am using a lot of effort with both hands. You can see my index is guiding. These fingers are holding like a lobster claw. And my right hand is moving the weavers. If you have a motion that's better for you, then use it. You don't have to do it the way I do it. Whatever works best for your hands is the way you do it. What if we just stopped at a smaller diameter so you don't have filming on and on of this? Because it's going to keep just this until it's that big.
Do you want me to just stop?
It's that. That's what I was
stop
thinking.
and you can keep going?
Well, whatever's easiest on your end for editing, because there's not really...
I mean, if there's nothing really going to change between...
Oh, you know what? Can you cut that part out and we'll show how to replace?
Yep.
We'll go until I have to replace.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Because I don't want to make it too boring. Okay, you can see we're about ready to run out on this piece. Just keep going until there's no more to work with. And just let it lay wherever it falls. See how short it is? And that one falls behind. It's okay. I'm just going to leave it. When I get done, if I want to take a pair of scissors and cut that off, I can. Or I can leave it there. You can even come back here and cut it off on the inside if you want to. You just cut it off and leave it. We're going to leave it there. We're going to get a new piece. And I'll show you how to replace. It's really, really simple. I'm going to get a paper towel so I'm not flipping water everywhere. I'm not really drying the rattan. I'm just catching the drips so that it doesn't fly all over. All right. So this one ran out here. And it's on the outside. I'm going to leave it there for now. I might decide to replace it. Maybe not. I'm going to take this one and place it as if that piece was not ending. It's laying there. I'm just going to lay that literally right on top of there, hold it in place, and just keep twining like it never happened. Sometimes they fall on the inside. Sometimes they fall on the outside when they end. Most of the time I just leave them. This kind of basket, it doesn't really matter. And you can see we're coming around, and the second one is going to run out. We'll let that one stay on the inside just to see. I'll trim it just a little. See how that's sticking up? I'm just going to leave it there. I'm going to grab a new piece. And see, this one would be coming over from here and coming underneath there, but it's ended. So I'm just going to lay this on top of it. Just lay it right there, hold it in place, run it under that set of spokes, and just keep on going. By the time you get that 2 or 3 strokes down, it's going to stay there. It doesn't go anywhere. And you just keep going. And that's all you have to do. Replacing is really no big deal. I'm going to go around one more time just to secure everything. And then I'll show you how to start your wall. When you first start the wall, it's a little bit, I don't want to say frustrating. I think that's a discouraging word. It's a little challenging. But once you get your spokes going upright, it becomes a lot easier. See, we're coming around to where I replaced the rattan. Just keep going like it's not there. Just like that little end doesn't exist. If it bothers you when you get done, you can take your cutters and just trim them off. Or you can leave them, doesn't matter. All right. I'm going to move away from that area and cut my weavers off so I can show you how to do the wall. I don't want to end everything in the same spot because then you'll have one area that has a whole bunch of ends sticking up. It's better to have some over here and some over here. It just adds texture, I think. I kind of like that sort of unplanned look. But I don't want all the ends in the same place. Okay. When you finish, just clip your ends off and make sure that you leave enough length that they stay in place. It's just going to lay right there. You can make this base a little bigger. Mine's a little bit small. You can see in the sample there's not much difference. Maybe 2 or 3 more rows. The bigger you go on your base, the less spoke you're going to have to go up. So if you want a deeper bird nest, then you need to have a smaller base because as you use up the spoke, you have less and less to use for your wall. And these are kind of more bowl shaped than cylinder. Oops. Sitting on the cord doesn't help. Okay, when I get to this part, I go ahead and put my base in the water just to get the spokes a little more damp. They're easier to boss around. And you can see the wall is built out of, and your kits will have these, have enough material you can cut these. They're about 8 inches long. Same material, number 2 round reed. My sample has 100 of these in it. You can put more, you can put less. You can weave in yarn, metal, anything you want, as long as it's flexible. You don't want to go with anything real heavy because number 2 rattan is pretty flimsy. It's a small rattan, and if you get something heavy, it won't have any wall support. because the spokes are so thin. All right, I'm feeling like a mess right now. And water everywhere. I kind of go through and sort of run my fingers up each of my spokes just to give them the idea that they're going to be made to go up. Kind of gives you a little, see how they're starting to bow? You can see the difference. Just starts to work them up a little bit. And I'm holding pressure so I don't have a drastic bend. Some people like to use a clothespin or a little clip when they start doing this part. I discovered hairpins. I'm going to pull that from just literally a regular hairpin. It might help you. You can start at any spoke you want to start at. And we're going to run one of those little short 8-inch sections in front of one spoke, behind the next one, in front of this one, and it's just going to come around that one and hang out. And I'll show you upright so hopefully you can see it better. If I'm going to be in front of this spoke, I have a tendency to run it from the next spoke to the right. If you're left-handed, you'd be coming this way. Just because it's easier for me to let this spoke hold it in place than it would be to take my hand and hold that there and go behind this one. It's just easier for me to place it like that. And just let that end stick out. This is what gets kind of the porcupine look. It's in front of this one, behind this one, in front of this one, and then it goes behind that one, and you just let it hang out. So then, if you started here, where you're in front, you just move over to this spoke, and you're going to go in front of that spoke now. So you grab another little piece, and I come in from behind the spoke to the right, and just let that hang out. Hold it in place. You're in front, behind, behind. And I just kind of keep working the spokes upward a little bit. Now, if these start flipping out and that gets aggravating for you, that's where your clips come in handy. And you can move it. You don't have to leave it because you put it. And you can use as many as you want. I like the hairpins for this project because they're thin and you can leave them there and pull them out when you're done. Depending on where and how you place them, it might look kind of cool just to leave them there. I've not done that, but it might be kind of neat. And these ends are starting to come up, just push them back down. So, to figure out where we started, we're in front of this one, we're in front of that one, we're going to go in front of this one. In front, behind, and just let those ends fly. Let them fall where they may. I'm going to set this down so I can shape a little better. It's amazing how many little pieces it takes. Okay, I'm in front of that one. So I want to be in front of this one. The more you go around, the more it stays in place. I want to put some out. I don't know if you can tell, I'm slipping behind this one. I'm actually trying to be in front of this one. So I'm just slipping it behind the one beside it. It's just easier. And then just pick this one up. See how they all just stick out, and you just keep letting them stick out, and you go around and around like that. The tricky part for me is to keep track of where I am. You just have to look for where the last spoke is that you were in front of it. So if I'm looking around and I'm confused, I'm in front of here, in front of here, in front of here. I'm not in front of here. So that's where I need to start. So if you get interrupted or you stop for whatever reason, just look for the last spoke that you were out in front of, and the very next one, the next consecutive set is where you're starting. That's where you left off. In the first row, I kind of let it be a little flatter because it's just easier once you get this first row in. So I just let it kind of lay in front. I want to go in front of this one. It's basically like a plain weave, but you're not doing anything with your ends. You're just letting your ends hang out. A couple more and I'll be back to where we started. Oh, see, I just lost where I was. All right, I'm in front of this one. And this, you have to look through the ones you've already placed. See, like I'm trying to figure out where to start, and these ends can be distracting. But remember, we talked about looking for the last one you're in front of. This is the last spoke I'm in front of. So I need to come in front of this spoke. So I'm going to slip in behind the next one and just let it stick out. In front, behind, in front, behind. All right. And you can see on this one, see this piece sticking up? That's actually from our base where I didn't cut it off. I'm just going to push it back down out of my way and leave it. I can cut it off later. I can let it stick there. Doesn't matter. Just as long as I don't weave it in. I suppose you could weave it in too if you wanted to. I mean, it's just supposed to look like sticks when you get done anyways. This is a good point to show as you're looking at this. I'm trying to figure out where to start. I laid it down and put it in the water. So I look around my circle and I can see I'm ignoring all this. This is the last spoke that I was out in front of. So this spoke is where I need to start. So let me get some more pieces out. I'm just laying them. Normally I would have a cloth to just keep them on so I don't have to keep reaching into the water. So with my index finger, I'm holding down the last one I placed, and I slip in behind the one to the right of where I want to be in front of. So I'm coming behind and out. So it's kind of like thinking backwards, but for me it's just easier than trying to hold this in place here and go behind here. So I'm in front, behind, in front, behind. I just keep pushing it down. And then I need to be in front of this one. And it goes this way all the way around. That's all you do to build the whole wall. You just keep going in front, behind, in front, behind. And you can see I'm starting to put a little bit of pressure with my index finger because I want that wall to start going up so that you can get a little bit of your bowl shape started. Oops, I almost went the wrong way. And see, at this point, I can pull that hairpin out. I'm going to do one with hairpins just to see, because now I've made myself curious about that. All right, so I'm out in front of this one. I need to be in front of this one. So there goes in front, behind, in front, behind. And if you see something like this looks a little long to me, you just go back and pull it. You can adjust them as you go. You can even adjust them when you're finished. So we need to be in front of this one. just kind of bending up a little bit. That one started to come out. Oh, he's supposed to be there. All right. I'm hoping this makes sense and everybody can see what I'm doing. It gets to be a little bit of a visual, trying to separate out where you're at. Just make sure that you've got a piece sticking out from in front of every spoke around your circle. And pay attention to the top row and try your best to ignore the rest. And just keep pushing things down and making sure your ends are sticking out. And like I said, you can use a clip whenever you want to. Sometimes people get little brass clips. Sometimes I use a clothespin. I just started trying the hairpin for this project and I kind of like that. All right, you're just going to keep going around until you get it as high as you want it to be. And you can see it's starting to make the bowl shape and it just kind of leans on those ends. And this is the last point where I was in front, so I want to be in front here. See how I'm pushing in with my hand? Eventually, when you get enough rows in, that will make your spokes stand up. Traditional basketry, that's called the upset. If you actually take your spokes and crimp them and make them go straight up, that's called an upset. We're not really doing that. We're just kind of rounding them up. Just kind of gently pushing them up so that we get this bowl shape. I don't know how high to go to get the idea. Do you think that's enough?
Yeah, I think so.
That's true. All right. So we can stop with that and then go with this one.
Yes.
All right. So once we keep going around and going around, we get as much height as we want. I stopped on this one because I'm running out of spoke and I wanted to have enough to show a braid. You can do it a couple of different ways. I tend to just keep things in pairs and go behind one and out. You can, if you want to, separate your pairs and go behind one and out. It makes a little more of a complicated look. But I like just keeping them in pairs. It's just easier and it locks everything in place in one step. So I'm just going behind and out. And we're going to do that all the way around. You want to get your spokes fairly wet for this step so that they don't crack. If they do crack, just grab a scrap and run a piece down in where it broke off and roll on just like it didn't break. It doesn't have to be weight bearing. If it was a weight bearing basket, that'd be a whole different repair. But this is just going to sit on a shelf and look cute. Sometimes I use them for gift baskets if I'm getting someone something small. A pair of gloves or a hat you can stick in there. Just going behind and out, and I'm leaving them in place. Just let them lay there. And I'm starting to come apart a little bit over here, but we're not going to care about that. Just let them stick out. Push them down. Get behind and out. Behind and out. When you get to the last one, loosen up your first spoke so that it makes a loop. Be careful not to pull it all the way out because that will unleash the whole row. Just stick your ends through that loop. So if you can imagine it, If you can imagine that this is standing straight up, you're coming out behind it. You're just sticking it through that loop. And then just push it down. And that braids out the top and makes everything stay together. I kind of just go around and push it in. If I find any that look wild to me, I try to find the other end and pull it a little bit, even it out. And see how this looks a little long right here? I don't like that. So I just push it. You can see it's right here. Just pull it in a little bit. And just go through, and you have any sticking out more than you want them to, push them through. If you want to, like some of them look kind of long, you can take your cutters and just trim them off. Those are braid pieces. Sometimes a piece will be longer. But that whole top part is just behind one and out, behind one and out, all the way around your basket or your bird's nest. And see where we replaced? We have little ends sticking up. You don't really notice, particularly if you cut it, it's called a slipe. I'll show you on a piece of scrap. You'll have different cutters in your toolkits, but a slipe is when you cut at an angle instead of cutting this way. See, that makes a blunt end? You cut it this way and you slipe it. And then it leaves an angle, and then that lays a little bit smoother in the bottom of your basket or along your sidewall. It won't show up as much. So you can do that. And we left a long piece on the bottom, I thought. I see you can't even, here it is. Took me a minute to find it. See how that's sticking up? I can choose to cut that off, or I can choose to just shove it right in there like that. And then leave it or slipe it. I'm going to slipe it. It's got kind of spongy. There you go. And there's a finished basket. It's a little different from our sample because I put some longleaf pine needles that are about 15 inches long in my sample. So anything you want to weave in there, you can. Yarn would be really cool, some real textured yarn. The only thing is, if you want to color your nest, make sure that you color it before you add any kind of fibrous. Like, you wouldn't want to put yarn in it and then dump the whole thing in a dye bath to turn it brown or green or whatever you want to make it, because that's going to color your yarn. So make sure you put in whatever you want and throw it in a dye bath if you want, or spray it, or leave it natural. This is literally the difference of about 5 years. This one's been sitting in the environment. It's got nothing on it. This is fresh rattan, and that's the color difference you get. So you might want to keep that in mind. If you don't like that light color, just let it sit. It's going to get dark. It just naturally happens. All right, so that's how you make a bird nest. Enjoy.